Molly, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. This is so fun.
A new topic, maybe a different topic than you guys talk about every day. But first of all, I already said this before we started recording, but just wanted to congratulate you on your recent amazing performance at Black Canyon. Everyone was in the trail space, I feel like, was just so psyched to see you join our trail community. Not that you haven't been in it, but it was super cool to see. So congrats again.
Thanks so much, Eddie. I appreciate it. It was really fun to finally get that first true ultra experience and also just feel so welcomed in the community. I know trail is it is one of those sports where I think the community focus of it is what makes it really special. And I think that feeling of people being really excited for me to be there rather than being what is this roadrunner doing coming into our space? That was really, really special.
Totally. No, I mean, that's what I love about trail. I mean, I dabbled in road marathons and whatnot, and then moved to Oregon at one point and just showed up to a trail run and everyone was in tutus and costumes and we had hot chocolate after. And I was like, this is the best. This is the community I want to be a part of. So very cool. Well, yeah, I'm sure we'll get into road and trail and kind of some of those differences, but I'm super stoked to talk to you about, I know you are passionate, have a passion for environment, have studied it, and it's super cool to get to hear more about that from you today and kind of explore this new topic. So basically how I start out the podcast in general is usually just asking folks to introduce themselves. And so many of our listeners will know who you are, but I'd love to have you introduce yourself in whatever way strikes you today.
Yeah, my name is Molly Seidel. I am a professional long distance runner for the USA. I competed at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, got a bronze there in the marathon, and I am now transitioning to ultra marathon and trail. I just ran my first ultra, as you said, last week. I'm still very much recovering from it. But yeah, no, I really just enjoy being outdoors. I'm a big skier. I love getting up into the mountains. I live in Flagstaff, Arizona, and also spend part of the year in Austin, Texas, two very outdoorsy cities in very different ways. So I feel very grateful that I've gotten to build this really incredible life around just spending time in the outdoors with people that I love.
So cool. And what a great community of people. And it's funny because it's road running is obviously outdoor. It's an outdoor sport, but there's something which we'll get into, but there's something, maybe I'm biased because I love trail, but there's something about really immersing yourself in the environment and nature. That's really cool.
Road running is so sterilized in many ways that it is you just keep running. Even if you do run a trail, you run the same very mild trail over and over. We definitely have specific trails in Flagstaff that are road runner approved. Or even people will say let's go for a trail run. And it'll be on a forest road. And I'm this is gravel. This is by definition a road, so that we cannot call this trail running, but sure.
Sure.
Yeah, but no, trail running, I can confirm that trail running is very, very different, especially in Flagstaff when you're within driving distance of the Grand Canyon.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. We can get into that too. Just kind of the scale and magnitude, I feel of some of the trail runs, we were just talking about UTMB, CCC, that, I don't know, the scale of mountains, I feel is kind of a different ball game in trail, which is cool. The other question I open with and kind of ask everyone that comes on the show is a really, it might take us back. And I do want to ask a little bit about your childhood too, but just in general, what would you say was your aha moment on climate or on environment in your life?
Yeah, so mine actually started pretty young because I grew up in rural Wisconsin, and a big thing in our area is that the farmland keeps being developed into strip malls, into housing development, and it really changes the character of the area around me. And my mom, basically, I think she started doing it when I was 5 years old, but she got really involved in land conservancy. She served on the Tall Pines Conservancy in Neshota, Wisconsin, where basically they preserve historic farmland and put conservation easements on it to be able to protect kind of that rural nature of the area that we live in. So that was basically my whole childhood. My mom really focusing heavily on that. So it was such a normalized thing in our family that hey, it's really important to preserve these. Obviously farmland is different than a wilderness space, but
sure.
It was kind of that really encouraged from a young age of like, we need to preserve these open, more natural areas because it improves our health, it improves the community, it preserves the nature of like what our hometown is.
Yeah, totally. And I think when you live like maybe more rurally or more close with like that close proximity to nature, I had someone on recently that it focuses on urban forestry because there's this sense, there's like these stats on the access to green spaces or lack of access. Like there's so many benefits. And then of course, there's obviously a lot of conversations about equity and privilege and access in that regard. But what was interesting to hear was sort of this, like, it also instills this sense of when you have access to green spaces nearby, it like instills a sense of conservation or sort of environmentalism from a young age. And I think that's, I grew up in Maine, also quite sort of rural. I mean, it's funny because you can be like in Portland, Maine, and then like drive 10 minutes and you're rural for sure.
Actually,
but, it was, but actually, but yeah, same feeling, sort of like that proximity and watching people in my life, like really go kind of preserve land or like talk about that topic was really interesting and just like all around, and that I think really impacts you.
Yeah, I think I'm really grateful for that, of like having that as a childhood. And even like I went to a really crunchy school growing up. It was like a very, very small private school. We had like a graduating class of 13 kids, but like the school was like really developed on this like Aldo Leopold style of I don't know, like land stewardship. And so we would have days, I want to say, outside of winter, it would be, I think, once every month where they would just give us like hand axes and loppers and you'd go out and you'd clear invasive species. Like it was wild. So that was like the fact that they gave a bunch of like adolescents just saws to go and cut down buckthorn was wild to me. But like we did that. That was just like a normal like activity.
You like didn't question it.
Well, no. And even then the most fun part too was that they would let us prairie burn once we got into high school. And so we had a small prairie down like at the base of where the school was. And they would bring out the fire department. They'd give us drip torches and literally let the kids burn this prairie and show like, okay, like fire is a natural part of the environment.
Yeah.
We can learn how to control it and use it well so that like we can basically turn this like crappy scrubland back into tall grass prairie, which is native to our portion of Wisconsin. And so that was also so cool. Like, I think they gave us so much autonomy to show like, hey, like your actions matter. Like when it comes to preserving and being a steward of the land. And so we're going to teach you how to do that shit.
I love that the fire department was there. I mean, like, makes a lot of sense. You had to have the fire department there.
Yeah.
But like that they were like, we have safety, here's the tools, and you go do it. Like,
I wonder
agency.
I really wonder what the fire department thought seeing a bunch of like 12-year-olds with drip torches of just being like, oof.
I have a really great picture in my head right now of like young children, almost like a Stranger Things vibe. I don't know, like kind of ready with the baseball bat or whatever, the drip torch. That's super cool. I really appreciate that. That was actually kind of where I wanted to go next with you, is to like, we got into a little bit of like upbringing, childhood, growing up, like relationship to nature. But throughout that time, I believe, and Kelly and I were talking about this yesterday, I was like, well, it sounds like Molly's not coming into trail. She's returning to trail. Because I believe you grew up sort of running trail and through cross country. Talk a little bit more too about like, as we're talking about your upbringing in relation to nature, like how did running play into that, if at all?
Yeah, all of my early running was on trails. Obviously, it's like southeastern Wisconsin trails, which are not the kind of gnarly, rocky, mountainous ones that we have out here. But still, we live in the Kettle Moraine of southeastern Wisconsin. So it's like very rolling hills, a lot of up and down, like heavy woods and whatnot. So my neighbor had 150 acres up behind our house with a 1.5-mile trail loop and then a 1-mile trail loop. And so I would just run that every single day. Like after school, I'd go up there. I would spend a ton of time in those woods. That was really like, it was just like a free space for us to go to because it was very safe for my parents to just like let us loose up back. We called it up back. Just like go into the woods. And I think just that, like deep comfort within the woods was established from an early age, like that being a very safe space. And so my running grew from there. I eventually moved as I got older to doing more runs around my school, more runs on the roads around my house. But I think like I still have like a deep love of those original trail runs. And obviously cross country was a huge part of my early running, and just getting to do that on like pretty gnarly, like verty trails, at least for the area that we're in. We were close to like Lapham State Park. I lived down the road from Neshota County Park. And so I had a great access to, I don't know, very runnable trails that I think established that pretty early on for me.
Yeah, and as you're, I feel like still in high school, starting to get really competitive, starting to be clear that your running is like going somewhere, that you're really talented. And you also decided to go study environmental science. And I think, is it biological anthropology? Is that your major?
So spot on. Yeah. So originally, so it's funny because I was pre-med technically. Like Notre Dame does it kind of weird that if you want to be pre-med, and I went into pre-med, I did not want to be a doctor at all. It was just because my parents were like, you're smart, you need to be a doctor. And I'm like, okay. So I get into college and I'm like, well, I hate pre-med. This sucks. And basically I eventually shifted that when you're pre-med, you take all of your science requirements, but you have to have I was in arts and letters pre-med. So you have to have basically a liberal arts degree. And then you take all of these pre-med requirements. Sorry, this is very inside baseball. So I
have a lot of doctor friends, so I actually know this from their studies. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So my freshman year, I ended up taking an anthropology course, and I was like, wait, this is way more fun. I love doing this. And so I focused my major, like I chose my major for pre-med would be anthropology, and my focus was biological anthropology. So I was doing a lot of like osteology, but as I shifted, I was like, I'm really interested in environmental science, specifically how that relates to anthropology. And so my thesis actually ended up being like landscape archaeology, going down to Argentina and focusing on like how changes in the environment change cultures over time. We were looking at like transitions to agriculture in Argentina. And it was so cool to get to marry those two interests. I eventually didn't even basically I switched to full-time environmental science and dropped the pre-med because I was like, this is way more interesting to me. I'm still doing all my science requirements. God forbid if I ever do want to go to med school, I just have to take one extra class. But I just found that I was fascinated by that idea of how changes in the environment can drastically change societies over time.
Yeah. And the connection between that. And is that, I feel like that I'm remembering a piece of research at some point that I read. Did you run in Argentina? Were you trail running in Argentina
I
too?
did. I trail raced a bunch in Argentina because I went down and I was the only person on the crew that spoke English. So I actually had pretty severe culture shock. But one of the women on the crew, Vale, she was a big ultra runner. So she would do a bunch of trail races and she knew I was a runner. And so she was like, hey, you should just come to these trail races. And they were fucking gnarly. Trail is such a strong word for what we were running on. It was like bushwhacking. I have never been so torn up from a race. And they were all shorter distance. I want to say nothing was over 20 miles or so, but it was so much fun. And I was at a point in my college track and cross country career where I was super burned out. I'd been really injured. And that really was the way that I rediscovered my love of running. I started riding 100 miles a week that summer. That really was the way back in for me of just seeing the community of trail runners down there, feeling instantly welcome, of being kind of this outsider and being brought in. And they're like, hey, you can run well, you should come join our crew. And everyone would just party after the races too. So I think that was the fun aspect of for me, that it really brought me back to the sport that I love, because I had just the collegiate system was everything that I hated about running.
Yeah. Cause at that point, I mean, you would obviously continue to progress. I feel like you're getting quite a bit of recognition even at that age, and maybe in a way that feels
No,
just,
it was the opposite. I had come as basically like the top recruit out of high school, went to college, and then struggled for 2 years.
right.
Like,
Okay. Yeah.
I did so badly for 2 years because it was just a bad combination of just like a lot of stressful factors. And then I only started getting good after that summer. That following year is when I won my first NCAA championship. Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. Okay. I love it. I love it. So yeah, it's interesting too, because I feel like following along with some of the thread of like your career, it's cool to see. I love how you talk about too, the like, yeah, it was like, maybe I was the top recruit and then I got to the next level and I was like not good for a while. And then I kind of like, I love though that Argentina sort of like reinvigorated that love and maybe like, who knows, probably, hopefully led to that success.
No, I honestly think it did.
Is cool. Yeah, totally. And I've run a little bit with like in South American countries, Chile, Argentina, and it's like, it is a party. Like
oh yeah.
I went to a party one time. Actually, I think it was like a climbing adjacent thing, but it was in a rock gym. It was like in a bouldering gym and it was like a rager and it was so fun because people were just like climbing the walls, but also like it was like a dance rave. It was, I was like, I've never seen anything like this. This is wild.
Yeah.
Only in Santiago or wherever I was, but that's really cool and cool that like, you know, it's also one of those places where it like doesn't matter. Like people are just like, oh, you can run, like come run.
Yeah.
Come run through these like bushwhacky trails that aren't trails that you can just
find. Everybody there was like real. I was like 19. I turned 20 that summer. And so everybody there was like real adults. Like in my mind, like they were all like in their upper 20s and early 30s. So they thought it was just hilarious that they were like, oh yeah, this psychotic little American girl. Like really like, because I was coming from like the American style of like very hardcore, like NCAA of like everything has to be so specific. I have to get an X train, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, calm down. Like, chill.
Like chill.
They're like, you could literally probably like drink a beer before this race and still be fine. Like,
I mean, it sounds very Argentinian to me from what I know, which I love. So so then you returned to college. Did you, I mean, like, I want to ask, I feel like it's like such a cliche question, but I'm like, what did you like ever have the path of like, I really want to go into environmental science or like be an environmental scientist? Or were you always kind of like, I'm studying this, but like running's for me and my career?
I think it was over that next year. Basically when I went to Argentina, it was the intention of like, I'm going to go get my PhD in anthropology, archaeology, like basically along that vein. And it would have been in environmental, like archaeology or like, some sort of, I don't know, hybrid, like environmental science, anthropological, archaeological deal. I really wanted to go to Berkeley to do like graduate education. And then I just got really good at running. And I was like, what I've always wanted to do is running. Like I'm very fascinated in these other areas, but like for me, it's running. Yeah,
totally. That's super cool though. I mean, it's interesting to think of, I don't know, it's like hard rabbit holes to go down. But sometimes I'm like, man, what if I had gone to like study at that thing or do that other job or whatever, you know, it's always interesting. And
it was cool though, because that enabled me to almost like merge my interests of running and environmental science. So going into my senior year, part of like my senior capstone was that I actually worked with the Ice Age Trail Alliance for a full summer of like the Ice Age Trail. It's a 1,200 mile national scenic trail that goes through Wisconsin. And it like a big part of it, it's really important to like get conservation easements on the land, getting basically farmers to agree to like preserve their land, put trail through it, and like signing over rights so that these areas are preserved. So I worked with them, like helping do that and also like trail building for the entire summer and use that as my senior capstone. So like it's stuff like that where I'm like the Ice Age Trail, it's like where I trained all the time. It mattered a lot to me. And so being able to merge those two interests, I was like, oh, like me as a runner, like can still make a big difference in what I do through things that are meaningful to me.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. And again, that's sort of like the theory of change of this podcast is like people that enjoy being outside, enjoy being in nature, like also have an interest in protecting it and even just learning more about it. So that fits exactly in with like what we talk about a lot here. So then you basically go have this extremely amazing running career, and not to, I mean, the funny thing here is I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm glossing over all of this because I want to get the environmental pieces.
Please gloss. I've talked about it so many times.
Yeah.
If one more person asks me how I felt after winning an Olympic medal, I'm going to scream.
We will not ask you that here. Okay, but you did travel around the world with this career. And I think that like what I'm both actually like a little logistical question is like, did you continue to run trail or was it pretty much just road? And like, if not, or if so, I'm so curious to hear. And I asked Dakota this too. And I think he was like, I asked Dakota, do you see changes in the environments you run through as you travel through the world? And he was like, well, I'm running really fast. So usually I And I was like, thanks, Dakota.
God damn it, Dakota.
Love you, Dakota. Sorry, I had to like.
We get it. You're fast.
It was such a fun answer. He's like, well, I'm like usually going pretty fast to like notice if the glaciers are melting. I was like, yeah, I get it. I understand. But I am so eager to hear like your career took off, and so did your sort of like travels and seeing different communities, different cultures. I actually have a fun follow-up question from Kelly, which I'll wait on for a second. But like, as you started traveling, did you like, what have you noticed through your career as you've like gone to these different places? Are there places you've returned to where you've been like, the environment's different from when I came last time? I'm just so eager to hear like how you started to feel, or not, connected to place through your running.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I feel like place matters a lot to me when I'm training. Like, I feel like I'm very geographically minded. So I actually, when I'm running in a place, I pay a lot of attention to like where I am and a little bit of like hyper focus on the environment, like to the degree that like I will sometimes get made fun of because I am like constantly looking at trees and flowers. And I think for a lot of it, I actually have continued to ski and do like very light ski mountaineering through my entire professional career. Obviously, I'm doing it more frequently now that I'm trail running. But I think for me, having family out in the high country of Colorado between Carbondale and Aspen, going out there every year and then living in the mountains here in Flagstaff, I definitely feel quite a bit of climate anxiety, like in all honesty, of just the reduction in snowpack for us, especially the less snow that we get, the worse fire season is, and we just don't have enough snow to support the flora and fauna of our environment here. And we've had some pretty bad wildfires here in the area. When I was out in Colorado last year, there was a pretty gnarly fire going through Glenwood Springs when I was driving back to my aunt's place. And I see the snowpack decreasing every year. I think for me, that is one of the biggest, most visible things that I can see of just like every year it gets less and less. Back home in Wisconsin, we don't get a hard freeze on the lake every year anymore. Like you can't ice boat and ice skate all winter now like you could. And I think that deeply scares me, and that deeply makes me want to take action on it, because it's like, very selfishly, I love winter sports. Like I love getting to go out and ski. I love being up in the mountains. And it really scares me when I see trees dying because they don't have the water because there was no snowpack, or just like fire blazing through because everything's a fucking tinderbox. So I don't know. I think like that actually is something that like since childhood I've been very anxious about. I did my middle school science fair exhibit on An Inconvenient Truth. So it's like, it's something like as a deeply anxious kid, I hyperfixated on that. And I see it now of like, these things that I feared as a child are coming to fruition.
Totally. And I think, I mean, I would continue to say, like, as outdoor athletes, we see it in a way that it might not be present in everyone's life until you talk about like people who are recreating outdoors, skiing, running, etc. We're seeing it every day. Like we're very, very aware of it. And I think this was sort of something to bring the Olympics in, but don't worry, no fear, not the usual questions. Like, I feel like the Winter Olympics this year started to like galvanize a conversation around snow and snowpack and snow availability. And like a lot of, there's sort of this, like all these different stats rolling around of some places in the world, like many places in the world won't be able to have a Winter Olympics in the future. And I feel like I sort of saw an awakening in new communities in my life that we're starting to talk about this conversation in a way where I was like, yes, this is like, this is where the climate things are. That's what I want to talk about. Like, yes. And I think like I've always tried to use recreation and sort of like a more of a positive framing on less doomsday on like, what can we do? But I mean, to just like sit with your climate anxiety for a second, like climate anxiety is real. And like, I think as outdoor athletes, at least I'll speak for myself, like I feel it every day because there's this like direct interface with the environment and like direct interface with these terrains and surfaces, even like to allow for certain sports to happen. And so I think that like, it's really interesting when I talk about like why I started this project. It's about that. It's about what you just named. It's sort of the like, so many people in my community and my friend group are like seeing this day to day. And I think like maybe don't know how to talk about it. And so there's this like, I'm always like, talk about it at the trailhead, talk about it at the crag, talk about it on the next paddle. Like it's okay to talk about this stuff. It doesn't feel like talking about it is actually going to hopefully spur people to like sit up and maybe take action, which we will talk about in a second. But I don't know. Like I'm like, I know it's the topic no one wants to talk about, but like we kind of have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Like how do we spur people forward and just giving people courage, I guess, or just sort of the like maybe tools, but just even at the base level, like hey, you know, like other people, like I really appreciate you sharing that because I'm like, I too have climate anxiety, but I don't like walk into a room and share that. Usually it's just kind of something, well, maybe people assume it about me because I'm doing this show, but there's sort of this like, I don't know who to talk to about it always.
Yeah.
You know?
And it is hard to explain sometimes because I think it's almost like, I think what sometimes gets lost in the conversation of like, I come from a very conservative family. Not everybody believes in global warming in my family. And it's hard to explain sometimes there is the fear aspect of being like, I'm watching the world change and I feel like I can't do anything about it. But I think there also goes with it this deep sadness that is hard to articulate as you watch places that you love, like change in a way that like they won't be able to go back. Or I think there's a deep sadness when I think of relationships that I've gotten to have to the natural environment that potentially my children, like I really want to have kids someday, they might not get to have those same things. I can't share the things that I love about being outdoors because the world is changing at such a rapid rate. And so I think it's hard to articulate sometimes the deep sadness that comes with it and a little bit of almost that feeling of like, I just don't know what can be done because I feel so powerless.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And the next generation piece, like even children having those experiences that we got to have growing up in these like rural areas, you know, you're like, oh, I want my children, if I have them, to ice skate on a hard you know, on hard ice. I grew up playing pond hockey and actually real hockey too. Not that pond hockey's not real. Pond hockey's real.
Yeah,
ice hockey on a
pond
team
hockey might be more real than real hockey. I've seen some pretty gnarly injuries from pond hockey.
I have too. I've gotten gnarly injuries from pond hockey. I misspoke. But yeah, I completely that really resonates. And I think so on the Olympic topic is funny. So Kelly Newland, who's a mutual friend of ours, was like, Addie, ask Molly about the Olympic villages. so I'm very curious to ask you this. I feel like it's very topical. But yeah, wait, what were you gonna say? Go ahead.
It's so funny because I'm gonna give like the worst answer for this because we didn't get to be in the Olympic Village.
Oh, because Tokyo.
Yeah, I got maybe one day in the Olympic Village. But we were in our own special little quarantine hotel up in Sapporo. So yeah, I really can't attest to any of the energy that goes on because we had a pandemic Olympics. I think sometimes like I've actually had multiple people message me about this Olympics and they're like, I'm really sad for you that like you didn't really get the full Olympic experience because it was a full quarantine. I'm like, baby, that's why I'm trying to make another team. I got to get that experience.
Yes. You're like, I got to go back. This is the whole point. Yeah, that's okay. That makes sense. I knew that Tokyo was, I guess, like moved the year, and then you probably had. Yeah, I wondered if there was like a different arrangement.
It was very weird. You had very limited time in the actual village, but the village itself was very cool, very Japanese space agey. Like they were big dorms,
cool.
But they had like a fun little like electric bus that went around. The dining hall was pretty cool, but you had like partitions up in it was like peak COVID. Like, it was and you could not leave to go anywhere. So we couldn't go anywhere around Tokyo. You had to stay just in the village there.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Definitely a different experience. You got to get another. We'll get
Very
another
different.
We'll
Yeah, that's it. I'm working really hard to get back into the Olympics.
You're like, believe me, I'm trying. Well, I think like, okay, so then like kind of branching from that question a little bit, this year's Olympics that just wrapped, I felt personally like the conversation, maybe it was because it was winter and snow and had that element to it, but there was like a lot of interesting athlete activism, it seemed like, or awareness about like oil and gas sponsorship or signing petitions that, were kind of coming out. Like I'm curious if you felt that at either one, because you also went to Paris maybe I
went there just to do sponsor stuff, but yes, I was in Paris during the last Olympics.
Okay. I was just curious if you felt, because this also segues into like athlete activism and possible conversation around that. I'm just curious, like, did you feel like the Olympics in those years had an environmental bent, or was it like not part of the conversation as much?
No, it really wasn't the part of the conversation. I think just so much of, because at least for the Olympics that I was at, because so much was focused on COVID, it was almost this like, there was a huge focus on mental health. I know. And that was like, I feel like the real moment around the Tokyo Olympics of kind of this.
Yeah.
It was like almost like the first time the public was made aware of like, athletes sometimes struggle with mental health. I'm like, no shit, Sherlock. But like, I feel like that was like kind of the breakthrough. And I think now what I think is really cool is that we are getting to a place where athletes are feeling really empowered to be advocates for things that they care about. We've moved past this dumb phase of sports where it's like, you're just an athlete. You don't know anything. You can't speak on it. And it's like, no, you can speak on things that mean a lot to you. And like, just because you aren't necessarily like a PhD climate scientist doesn't mean you can't speak about a topic that directly affects you. And I think that that's why, especially in these Winter Olympics, it matters, because these are athletes who are out experiencing this environment. Like just the concept of reductions in snowpack, like increases in temperature that are going to make it almost impossible for them to do their jobs, that inherently makes them an expert in their field, and they should be allowed to speak on it as well. I just hate that. I don't know, even like whether it's politics, whether it's environmental issues, I hate that attitude of just like, stick to your sport. It's like sports is inherently political. Like, let them talk.
Totally. Well, this is like exactly kind of where I wanted to go with this with you, because I think I've seen, I hinted at this before we started recording. Like, I've seen folks who don't feel like they're able to speak on a topic, specifically this topic, who are kind of like, well, I don't know enough and I'm not a perfect advocate. I'll shout out Dakota in a non-teasing way, because we love that man. He told me his whole story about environmental advocacy. And he said, for so long, I didn't feel like I could stand on a stage and say, I am a climate advocate and you can be too. And like, let me teach you kind of thing, because he didn't feel that he was perfect. So he took I don't know if you know this whole backstory. Do you know that he like took a cargo ship across the ocean to get to Europe one time? Oh yeah, dude. Like, he's biked to Western states. Like,
That's crazy.
He biked to Leadville, or he trained to Leadville or something. There was like he's basically done like all of this action to kind of like try to be the perfect advocate. And the funny thing is, he'll also be like, taking a cargo ship is like extremely polluting if it's just it's like going anyways, but it's
He's
also
not
like
hiring the cargo ship himself.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, so I guess like, I appreciate you bringing this up, because I think like I completely agree with you. And I feel like, especially on environment, there are a lot of, at least people that feel like, you're right, there are plenty of people that are like, don't speak to that, stick to your lane. Like, you're not a environmental PhD or whatever. But like, as an athlete, do you feel like, I don't know, like, how do you approach activism if you do, or is it just kind of part of like what you do? And I love that we're having this conversation because you are passionate about this topic and just want to talk about environment. And I love that. And I think that like, I want to empower more athletes, or like more people with platforms to do that. And I'm just so curious, like kind of like diving into this, your thoughts on this a little bit more, because I think it's growing definitely in the space. And we've referenced one person this whole time, but like, Killian, of course, and there's other like trail runners, but kind of in the outdoor space, like Protect Our Winners exists, and that's amazing. And they do such great work with athlete advocacy. But yeah, like what are your thoughts on athletes kind of taking a little bit more, being more vocal and not necessarily having to be perfect advocates?
Yeah. So I actually have like a pretty, I don't know, I would say complex view of this, or maybe like I try to look at it from a nuanced sense of like, I know a lot of people who they don't want to be advocates about stuff. They don't want to be talking about it. And it's like, and I fully accept that. I think everybody should be able to like feel comfortable in the way that they present themselves to the world, the things that they talk on. And so I always hate it. Like, especially when there's like a discourse going on, whether it's online, just within the public. And it's like, why haven't you said anything? It's like, that really is a personal thing. Like if you choose to speak out, that is your personal choice. And if you choose not to speak out, that is your personal choice. And that needs to be respected. So I want to say straight out, like, if you don't feel like compelled to like speak out on the environment or like what's going on in the government right now, it's like, that is absolutely your right to be able to do that. And you shouldn't feel like you're being forced into the conversation. I find that the advocacy that I feel the most, I don't know, aligned with, and that I really appreciate in other people, is when, rather than being extremely broad, it is really almost like specific to your experience. And by that, I mean, it's that like, I sometimes like, I feel really out of place when I'm just like, save the environment. I'm like, what does that even fucking mean? Whereas like when I can put it within my own context, within my own experience of like, hey, I'm a skier. It matters a lot to me that we have snowpack and like healthy ecosystems on the mountains. Or I'm from Wisconsin. It breaks my heart to see farmland and natural spaces being torn up for housing developments that now like the groundwater can't get, like we can't recharge the aquifers. It's destroying our lakes. Like it's that where it's like, speak on things that are meaningful to you. Like if you feel something that's happening within your space, it doesn't matter if it's small, because honestly, like everything starts on the local level. And if everybody speaks to something that affects them or something that they see happening, when we aggregate those together, that's where change comes from. So like, I think a lot of people get stuck in this idea of like, well, if I can't change everything, then there's no point changing anything, or there's no point speaking out. But it's like, speak to your experience, speak to what you feel, that thing that makes you just like angry, even if it's just a small little thing of like, you keep seeing somebody like dump shit in your local waterway, like that makes a difference to be able to instigate change, whether that's going to local lawmakers, whether that's creating like a cleanup crew in your community. It's like, I think the small things add up in a way that like it's hard to imagine that one small thing makes that much of a difference, but it does.
Absolutely. It's the whole, like, write what you know.
Yeah.
Or, speak like almost like kind of I statements. What lights you up? Like you can tell, I think to your point, you can really tell when someone is passionate about something from like a deeply personal, this was my experience, or this is my hometown and it's going through this, versus kind of a more performative.
Yeah.
Which, like, again, I hate even using that word because, like, everyone's trying.
I think everybody's trying, but I think it's like you can tell, like, and maybe that's it. I think you can tell when people have a personal connection to a specific thing. Like, and that's why sometimes, like, I'm not going to speak out about desertification in Africa because I've never experienced that. I'm talking out of my ass.
Totally.
About it. But I think that's why as you get interested in environmentalism, as your passion grows, as your interest grows, getting the opportunity to travel, to experience new communities, to see what is going on around the world and broaden your base of experience and knowledge so that you can speak to it and you can like instigate change. I think that is like almost part of the learning process. Like start small and grow. You don't need to start with picking up every piece of environmental trash in the Pacific Ocean. Like start small and local and let it grow as your resources grow, as your knowledge grows. Like, I think we all want to like bite off this huge chunk of things, but In the same
Totally.
way that like if you started running, you wouldn't go straight to 100 miles. You'd start with maybe a
I know.
5K and be like, I'm going to run this 5K really well. I know I'll get to the 100 miles, but like, let's
Yeah.
start where we're at.
Totally. Well, and as we know in the trail space, that goes real fast. People are like,
Yeah.
5K, then I did a 50 miler.
Yeah.
Now I'm doing 100. You're like, what?
And for some people in their advocacy experience, maybe that is it. Like
Right.
it might go 0 to 100 really, really fast, but I don't know.
Totally.
You shouldn't be mad at yourself if it doesn't. And like, and it's
Right.
not any less valuable to work on things at a local level, because if everybody does that, it really does grow into something special.
Totally. Oh, I love that. And I think that hopefully gives confidence to not just athletes with platforms or anyone with a platform, but anyone at all listening to this being like, I've never really spoken up on something. Because it's hard. It's hard.
It's hard, bro.
That like, I'll leave it there. But just some of the, it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it all happen, and I'm like, man, it's cool when, I guess I'll frame it in the positive. It's cool when people can come together and kind of like realize that people are trying or making effort or the intention is there. But obviously I know impact is important too.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to just hop offline because I'm like, I can't be here anymore.
I think we also have to remember, and I try to keep this in mind too, as someone who has gotten a lot of hate online throughout my career for many different things. Remembering online is not the real world. Like, yeah. And 100%. Online specifically, like, send so much negative stuff your way because that's how the algorithm works. I don't know. Being able to, I think, rooting yourself in the real world and realizing, like, I don't know. If you're doing anything of importance, people are going to shit on you online. And it is up to you whether or not you engage online. Like, it matters. Like, if someone's willing to come up to me in the real world and like say that to my face, I will take that a little bit more to heart than somebody with a random username that won't even put their real name online shitting on me on Instagram. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know you, fam. Like,
dude, hell yeah. I think you have to, I mean, that's, gosh, yeah, you've gone through it and you know, like you have to have that approach. And it sounds like it's not something you've, like, this seems cultivated over years of time and experience.
Don't worry. I definitely cried multiple times the first couple horrible ones.
Oh my God, dude. What yeah. Well, I think though, like, yeah, as you said, the real world, like ground yourself in the real world. And I think that's also, to me, that's also a good, like, sort of sits alongside this environmental conversation, because like that is where, to the point before, there's sort of, that's where the like connection to taking action to me is the most. If someone's like, oh, but the local park outside my house, like they're going to take it down and build something up there. It's like, that's what activates people. That's the 5K.
Yeah.
That's like the 5K metaphor. So, do you work with UNEP, UN Environment Program? Or did you do anything?
Yes, I have done stuff with UNEP. We did a campaign. I want to say it was in 2022. Early. It was me, and then is his name Nils, the Himalayan climber. Yeah, it was like, it was for basically is like a short documentary series, like
cool
for environmental advocacy. Yeah, and it was really cool getting to work with them. Honestly, like I would love to get like back in contact with them, because I don't know, stuff like that I think really does like matter.
Yeah. Did they reach out? Like, did they kind of like reach out to you and be like, hey, do you want to do something with us? That's so cool.
Basically they just like reached out through my agent and were like, and I was like, hey, that sounds cool. Like, I definitely want to work with the United Nations Environmental Program. Like,
yeah, absolutely. That's so, okay. I need to go, because Kelly mentioned that offhandedly yesterday. I was like, I'm going to write down a note to ask Molly about this.
It was a very short program. We just did this one little like filming thing. And I kind of wish that it had, I don't know, had a little bit more, I don't know, but so many times like people just come out and like film me running. I'm like, can we like actually do something? Like, like, sure, it's great. Totally. Like I could go run for you on film, but like, I'd rather like actually do something in the world that like changes something.
Yeah. Well, that could be, I feel like that is an interesting, I feel like UNEP, I could see it being either more like ambassadorship, sort of celebrity oriented, or it could actually be something where they're like, yo, we want to take you to this community, or like, or engage with you on your local community around work that you want to do.
Yeah. Cause I guess like and this might be more of a like a hot take. I'm like, I don't know. I am kind of the opinion that like advocacy and ambassadorship like only goes so far. I think there does need to be some like real world implementation. I just think a lot of people, and I feel this way sometimes too, of like, we almost let ourselves off the hook where it's like, well, I participated in that campaign or I posted that one thing. I did all I need to do. And it's like, bitch, no.
I am done.
Like, my work. I showed my face online and it's like, no, like just posting about it doesn't change anything. Like sure, it's visibility, but like things can be visible and still fucked up. Like, I don't know. I think it's that at least for me, in the things that I care about most and the areas that I feel like I've made the most difference was when I was actually like, okay, let's boots on the ground, go do this thing. Like, I had done that. I had worked for a foundation over in Ethiopia for a little while early in my pro career. And it had started out with just like visibility and advocacy. I'd gone over and done basically like a fundraising, like 100-mile relay through Ethiopia. And then I was like, wait, like, all I did was just go there and run and then like not really engage with the people there. So I just went back and lived there for a while and like worked in the town to like do ethnographic interviews with the moms and the daughters and whatnot. And it's stuff like that where it's like, I feel like advocacy, or maybe that's it. It's like ambassadorship or just like using your platform is a good start. But I think that like you do need to like implement some actual change by like doing the thing that you say you're going to do.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, giving, as you said, like, sometimes it's those like you sort of visit a community or you're there and then you leave and you're like, okay, well, like for an ambassadorship, but then like to your conversation, like you went back, you had conversations, you lived there. Like that's like really an interesting way to also kind of, say like, no, I'm not like done with my activism here, or I'm not done with my action. Like I want to actually go kind of like explore this a little bit more and figure out like what the needs are.
And I think sometimes going back to Dakota, because this entire podcast is not about Dakota.
Most referenced runner in our
reference runner, but I actually really appreciate it. I think in one of his Substacks he was talking about like sometimes when we go to these places on training trips or like for ambassadorships, you almost treat the people who live there like these background characters. You're like, I'm the star. Look at this issue. And then you leave and you're not engaging with the people who that is their lived experience. And they're the ones who are still like, even after you leave, even after the cameras are gone, they are still living there in that. And so it's like, I think being able to increase the engagement is just as important as increasing the awareness.
Yeah. Damn, I love that. Okay, I know exactly what Substack article you're talking about, I think, because it's the like Transvolcani one or something. Like he did one that was so good about the visiting and the kind of reporting out and like what happens after. Also random, but do you know or have talked to Claire Gallagher? Because I feel like you would love each other.
Okay, no, we've had like 1 degree of separation for like our entire pro careers because so many people that I know Claire, have run with Claire. Like some of my best friends are like her best friends. And it's so funny because we just have never actually like connected and it's wild.
Yeah. You remind me of each other. And I just ran into her in Boulder, actually did an event with her. And I was like, it's just so funny hearing you talk. I've known Claire for like a decade and she's so great. And it's cool because I think you both have this like, what is it if we just kind of like, we got to go deep. Like we got to like commit. I mean, she's, as you might know, she's like, I mean, running wise, I'm not sure, but I know she's like dove into her PhD. She's doing like coral reef, marine science PhD in Colorado. Like I just think, I don't know. It's been so fun to watch her career, like both running and environment, but you both remind me of each other. Thanks. So if you ever need, it sounds like you don't need an intro, but if you ever need an intro.
Well, no, we just need to like actually finally coordinate.
You just need to hang. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So we are wrapping our time together, which obviously has been, I again feel like this conversation could go many different directions and probably will continue hopefully throughout us being in touch and knowing each other and maybe seeing each other at trail races. The question I ask everyone and wrap with is, what is your favorite climate solution that I usually say that is not your own. But in this case, I'm just sort of curious. Like, I guess your own quote unquote would be like, because sometimes I interview, like folks who work on urban forestry. So I say like, let's get another one. But I'm curious, like more open-ended, what do you feel is an environmental solution that you are really excited about?
So this is going to come like out of left field because this does not speak like after I just gave this whole thing of like, speak to your own experience.
Sure.
I actually am pretty negative on AI and data centers, and specifically ones that they are building here in Arizona. I believe there's supposed to be a data center that's going up near Page, and through a lot of the canyons up there and along the Colorado River. And I think that data centers, just with their use of water, are an absolute disaster on the environment. And unchecked regulation on them is going to be an absolute fucking nightmare. So I actually feel very strongly that we need to halt a lot of data center construction, or at the very least heavily regulate it, because it is sucking up the very limited fresh water that we have here in the Southwest that so many people in this region rely on. So much of the environment relies on. It is just insane to me that these things are allowed to pop up and drastically change the environment. It's like they suck up water, they create enormous amounts of heat, and like, I don't know. I think that
energy usage,
like all of the rates of energy are going up all around the country. Even like there's been specifically like people are having like weird reactions to the noise down in Phoenix.
I've heard this.
Like physiological responses to just that amount of noise pollution coming from them. So I'm very anti data center, and that might be the most Luddite thing about me, but I think that there needs to be much, much more regulation on this because it's just running rampant right now. And we're letting the tech bros absolutely gut the environment in order to train their AI models.
Yeah, no, I mean, the whole, like, it's not in your experience or whatever. Like this question usually gets people being like, well, I don't even know. I've never worked on this before, but like, this is what I'm passionate about. And that's what I love. Like that to me is absolutely like, cause it is local to you. It's in your, I mean, depending on proximity. I'm not super.
If one went up in
need to brush up on
I'd be out there spray painting the sides of the fucking building. I'm sorry.
I'm sure.
Unfortunately, I definitely fall more like monkey wrench gang eco-terrorism. One of the areas that we really love to run through here in Flagstaff, it was bought up. It's a beautiful little wetland area with a trail going alongside. All the runners go through there. And it was bought up and is going to be turned into a golf course. They've put up fences all around, like basically. And we bought bolt cutters and like masks to go for a little environmental terrorism of like cutting the fences repeatedly. And just like, we were like, do you think we could find like an endangered frog that we could just like place on the land so that they can't build this golf course? And I'm just like, we don't need another fucking golf course.
And but I mean, you have to, it's kind of maddening when that stuff happens where you're like, there's like, who made this decision? How do we like participate in this decision-making process? Well, that is an excellent climate solution, is just standing up for the wrongdoings of data centers. And hell yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah, exactly. Molly, thank you so much for talking about something that you don't get to talk about a lot, hopefully. And also just like, really refreshing to hear your take on advocacy and environmentalism. And I hope, like, I feel inspired by what you said about just like kind of go for it, like talk about what you want to talk about, like advocate for what you want to talk about, and like don't be afraid to do that. And I hope people listening will feel that too. So thank you for your time.
No, thanks, Eddie. I appreciate it. And that, like, I appreciate getting to be on a pod like this. Like I do a lot of running podcasts, but I feel like this has been really fun of just getting to do something that like, it's a little bit different from what I normally talk about, but I think that this kind of stuff matters a lot. And so I think it's cool that you're doing this pod.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, hopefully, we'll definitely be in touch, and I want to make sure that like the outdoor recreation space is continuously talking about this, and like hopefully we'll see more folks like you and like infuse these conversations into their daily runs or whatnot. But yeah, it's super cool. And it's good it's like fun to have allies like yourself. Like, it's just fun to be like, oh, we all like, we know, we like have this interest.
Like, I see you. I see you.
It's like, I see you. I got you. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you again. And we'll see each other soon, hopefully.